Hello. So, welcome to the second part of paper 2, which is we are still on methodology and social perspectives. But in this video, we are going to try to understand. Last time we studied all the theorists and the theories that are involved in this study. In this video, we are going to look at how social identities are created, and for that we will have to go back to what we did the last time, the theories, and now we are going to put those theories in two different categories. All right, now these theories were different, but because of certain similar threads, we can put these theories into two categories. All right, so now let's see what those categories are. The first category is the category of structuralism. All right, so in this chapter we are mainly concerned with two separate categories of theories, and the understanding of that will help us determine how social identity is created. And the first set of theories is called structuralism, and the second set of second approach, let's say, to studying social behavior and what governs social behavior is called interactionism. So in this part we are going to take up structuralism versus interactionism, and then we are going to move on with the details of both. So now let's first look at structuralism. All right, so Durkheim and Marx are both different, but they both seem to agree on one point. And what is that one point that they are agreeing on? They are saying that whenever social action takes place, and please recall what social action was. Social action is not action in isolation. When my action is directed towards somebody else, this is social action. So what are they saying? They are essentially saying that when social action takes place, there are some dominant forces in society, some deep underlying forces that are determining how people interact, how people act in a social context. Okay, there is deep disagreement on what those forces are. All right, for example, Marx is saying that those forces include the forces of capitalist relationships, class distinctions. All right, and those forces will then create conflict, but that's fine. And what is Durkheim saying? Durkheim is saying that no, those forces include institutional arrangements in societies, how the courts are organized, how the police are organized, how the education system is organized. So one is talking about conflict, the other is talking about order. Durkheim is talking about order and institutions, and Marx is talking about conflict. But nonetheless, they are both agreeing on one point, and the point is that the individual has very little role to play in what's happening. Everything is being determined by outside forces that are beyond the control of the individual. All right, so both are essentially looking at social action from the point of view of macro sociology. All right, they're taking the big picture. They are taking the picture of society at large, where the individual is the object of the effect that these forces, these underlying forces are going to have. All right, so these people who believe that social action will be governed by some underlying forces that are beyond the control of individuals, all right, these people are called structuralists. Why would people commit crime, for example? Okay, so people would commit crime because because of forces that are beyond their control. They were probably born in certain situations, in certain homes, where they had no choice to pursue a decent career. They just got involved in crime, forces that were beyond them. Okay, so here the individual is not important. The important thing is the social setting and forces that are beyond the control of the individual. All right, the interactionist takes the opposite view. Okay, for the interactionist, social action is determined by the individual. The individual is now at the center of whatever is happening. So what would the interactionist say then? The interactionist would say that, look, society is created. What is society? Society is not created by institutions that are imposed from the top. Societies are created through interaction. And through these interactions, people derive and assign different meanings to different situations and different phenomena. So the interactionist would say that in order to study social action, then we will have to study this process of interaction, these interactions that take place and that help people determine what society is going to be. But this study, because it is the study of the individual, then this study will have to be conducted at the micro level. All right, and there are three approaches. There are three approaches to interactionism. Now these are related, and this is the way of studying. So the interactionist will study social action based on one of these three approaches. These are the approaches. These are not schools of thought. All right, these are the approaches of studying interactionism. And what are these approaches? The first approach is called phenomenology. All right, so what is the focus of phenomenology? The focus of phenomenology is that in this world there are various phenomena, and these phenomena have to be assigned meaning by the people, and they will be interpreted by the people. So this is phenomenology. The second is, so the second study then, the second method is called ethnomethodology, and this method accepts that people are always trying to assign meanings to things. Okay, and if we can determine what and how people are assigning meaning, then we will be able to understand why they are behaving in a certain manner in a certain situation. So this is ethnomethodology. And the third then is symbolic interactionism, and that there the important word is imposition. People impose meanings on various situations. They impose meanings on various things, and what meanings they impose on things will determine how they will behave towards certain things and certain situations. For example, if you see an expensive mobile phone with somebody, what meaning will you assign to that object? What meaning will you assign to that situation, to the person carrying that mobile phone? Are you going to say that this is a rich person and I should befriend him, or this is a person who is spendthrift? He's a big spender, and therefore he may not be, or maybe he is a person who likes to show off, and this is not a person I want to hang around with. So just by imposing a meaning on an object, we are able to explain people's behaviors in certain situations. All right, so in 1984, this thinker, the sociological thinker Giddens, he develops another theory, another philosophy, and that theory is called structuration. What is structuration now? Okay, he introduces the concept of roles and responsibilities. We as individuals have to play various roles in just one day. Just imagine yourself, you go to college, you're in class, you're playing one role, you're a student. You get out of the class, you're with your friends, you're playing another role, you're a friend. That role is very different from the role you were playing in the classroom. Then you travel home, you're a traveler, it's a different role. You go home, the role changes completely, right? So with each role comes responsibility. This is not the role of a movie. It's not the role in a TV drama where you can just play the role and then forget about it. No. When we talk of roles in a sociological context, we are talking about roles with responsibility. And when roles and responsibilities go together in a social context, this creates what is called social structure. And Giddens has spoken about the social structure that is created. He talks about a process of creation of social structure which he calls structuration. This structuration is characterized by, what is it characterized by? It is characterized by when you go to class, think again, you behave in a certain way. Next day you go to class, you are expected to behave in that same way. You will behave in a certain way. Every time you go to class, you behave in a certain way. That becomes a formal routine. So these roles and responsibilities create routines for you which become formalized over time. Okay, so structure is developing and you are becoming the way you are expected to behave, the way you are behaving right now. First it was a routine, it became a formalized routine. This formalized routine is called practice. Okay, this formalized routine that you have in your role that you're playing. Okay, think again. You go home, you rest 1 hour, it's a routine. After that you are expected to wake up and do your homework. Alright, if you don't do your homework, that's not right for a student. This is a formalized routine, it's becoming your practice. And over time routine becomes practice, and over a longer stretch of time these practices become expected behavior. Students have a way of behaving in a certain way in class. That is their practice. Now you are also expected to behave that way. That becomes an expectation, that becomes an expected behavior. So structure is determining how you are expected to behave in your roles. And now this behavior is externalized. It was students' behavior, how they were behaving in class, but now they're expected to. So those maybe good practices or expedient practices come back to you in the form of rules. So you understand this? You behave in a certain way, that becomes routine. When it becomes routine, it becomes accepted behavior in society. That accepted behavior then becomes the rule of society, and the rule of society then comes back and it is imposed on other people in the same role. Students are also expected to behave in the same way when they are in class. Okay, so keep in mind, this is 1984 Giddens, and he gives this very interesting concept of structuration. Alright, so now that is understood, that our practices or the practices of others then come back to us, and we are expected to observe certain rules of behavior. But these rules have to be learned. Alright, these rules have to be learned in order to survive and thrive and succeed in society. One has to learn these rules over a period of time. the process of learning these rules, these social rules, is called socialization. All right, and this is what we are concerned with in this chapter: socialization, how it takes place, and what are the agencies that help in this process. Okay, so does nature play a role in helping us behave in the ways that we do behave actually in society? Does our nature play a role? When we talk about nature, there's a very important thing in nature which is called instincts. All right, and instincts are fixed tendencies to do certain things. All right, so there are certain things that we know instinctively, though when it comes to human beings there are very few things that we do know instinctively compared to animals. Animals have more instinctive knowledge. For instance, who teaches an animal to walk? All right, like the calf of a wildebeest, which is born during a migration while the mother is practically walking, and then he gets up and almost immediately starts to walk. Who teaches that calf to walk? God does, through instincts. These are instincts. This knowledge is there, it's fixed. So when we're talking about instincts, we are not talking about any knowledge that can be acquired. We're talking about knowledge that is there and it's fixed. So this is one extreme. So this is in our nature. Now if you come to human beings, what do instincts do? What does our nature do? It gives us very strong hints on how we are supposed to behave. All right, for example, a woman may have a tendency for loving children. Men may have slightly lesser developed tendencies to hold children or to interact with children closely, but women would have a highly a greater propensity to do the same thing. So nature is giving a very strong hint to the human female that this is the way she can behave, but it is entirely up to the person whether he or she chooses to take the hint or not. Okay, so women may not be they may not stay home and look after their children. In fact, there are women who do work, and fathers stay home and look after the children. All right, so yes, nature does give a hint, but how well human beings take the hint, or whether they take the hint at all or not and behave accordingly, will determine how much their nature determines the way they behave. So here there is an important study of the feral child. All right, the feral child is that child who develops in absolute isolation from any human contact. She does not have a human contact, and the study of these feral children have revealed that if nature forces us to develop in a certain way, these children develop very differently. They do not follow the rules of behavior that children who have socialized properly observe. And then it's not just that. Even when these children are brought back to human society, they continue to adapt less well to the human society in which they are brought back. Now, if nature was a very strong factor, they would have immediately adapted, they would have immediately changed, and they would have become like other human beings. But that process is really, really slow, and sometimes it just doesn't take place. So that's the question mark. Does nature determine? Okay, the study of the feral child shows no. Nature is not the main factor. The main factor is socialization. Whether you will behave in a certain way or not will be determined by whether the human being has socialized in a certain context. And the context is a very important factor whenever we are talking about interactionism. And whenever we are talking about this particular concept, then we have to talk about two theorists. One is Mead, George Herbert Mead, who presented his point of view in 1934, and the other is Goffman. Okay, and they both of them place context at the very center of behavior. They say that the context will determine how people behave in certain situations, but Mead says that how we behave in certain situations is also determined by how much we have learned to socialize in those situations. This is not something that happens instinctively. Even self-awareness, the ability to see ourselves as others are seeing us, is also something that is learned. Okay, it is not something that's just developing instinctively. Okay, so Mead has given this very important insight into the self, the context. Behavior is always determined by the context, and how we have to behave in a certain situation has to be learned. Okay, and then Goffman sort of builds on it, and he writes something very interesting, which I will read out to you. He says, social life, he sees social life as a series of dramatic episodes, and in these episodes people are actors. Sometimes they write their own lines and they speak their own lines, and when they are speaking their own lines, then this is their personal identity. But that personal identity is not enough. Sometimes people also follow the lines given by others, okay, because they want to become part of society, so they are following the lines given by others. These lines are like lines of that an actor is speaking, and they are just provided to him by somebody else, and they are doing this to fit certain situations and certain roles, because we understand how our society. He's given an example of masculinity. For example, because we understand how our society defines masculinity and femininity, we know how we are expected to behave if we are male or female. Now, in a Western country, in a country like Norway, the norms of behavior of males and females may be completely different from, let's say, a country like Iran, where males and females have different roles as compared to the roles played by them in European countries. All right, so this is the first part of socialization. I urge you to go through the concepts that we have spoken about today, and then in the next video, then we are going to take these concepts further. Okay, thank you very much indeed, and see you in the next video.